I think certainly at the beginning, especially with starting side hustles or a blog, you're going to face this feeling of, wow, this is taking so long, right? You're going to look at everybody else and be like, they seem to have it all figured out. I certainly felt that. It took me a good 2 years to get my blog up and running and successful. I failed a lot of the way. I didn't have a big budget, so a lot of people were able, and I didn't know anybody in the blogging community. Nowadays, there's so many blogging communities. Back in the day, it was just me, living La Vida Broca, right? Traveling and traveling and trying to figure this blog thing out. So if you're feeling that right now and you're like, man, I just don't know what should I do? This should I do that? Should I? It's normal. And just know that I actually just created a video this morning. I said, we think success is in the big moments, in the big actions. Actually, if you just do one small thing every day and stick at it, it will work out eventually. Okay. So the first challenge was comparisonitis, overwhelm, and not knowing where to begin. But if you stick at it long enough, it will eventually ride out and you'll figure it'll click.
Welcome back to another episode of World Travel Made Easy with Itinerary Boss. I'm excited to have Aisha Preece on today, where we're going to dive into traveling the world, as well as blogging and just being able to live the nomadic lifestyle and keep some of the finances that you earn. I'm really excited to have her on. And before we get started, just want to share a free resource that I have. It's around the holidays. So go check out the 31 holiday gift guide that I've created to help you getting started traveling quicker. As well as if you tune into the episode, make sure you're giving us a follow, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any upcoming episodes of value that are coming your way. So with all that being said, want to welcome Aisha onto the show. How are you doing today?
Hi, Ross. Thank you so much for having me. And thanks everybody for listening. I really appreciate all your time. I'm going to try and make today as valuable as possible. Today, I'll share there's two aspects. One is how I monetize my travel blog so I can travel more and save and invest in my future. And also, for a long time and still now, I travel solo. How do I travel? How do I travel and balance work and travel? And also how to travel solo safely. So I'll try and cover those topics depending on what Ross asks me. And at the end, and also in the show notes, I have a couple of freebies because I wanted to make sure this is useful, as possible for all of you. I have some blogger income reports from different niches so you can see how they earn more than $10,000 a month, travel jobs that I've earned from, exactly how much they've paid, and also all the ways to kind of follow and subscribe. But, thank you so much, Ross, for having me. I hope it's not too late there. And yeah, fire away.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited. And I know just, talking around, I mean, me personally, right? I'm for my business, I'm always looking to learn, just blogging, right? Getting as much valuable information out to people who are wanting to travel. And that's, diving into it. This is just as much a learning session for me as my audience, which I'm excited about. I know I had Lana Sittler on a former podcast, and she's into blogging, and a lot of people really like that episode. And I think one thing too, when we were talking prior when we first met, is it's not only making that income, right? It's keeping that income. And if you're someone who wants to travel, how do you live that lifestyle? So I'm really excited just to learn more from you because you've done it. And I think when people go to look at the resources that we share in the show notes, as well as all of your social media, they can see that front and center. So I'm excited for this. But yeah, I think it'd be good just to understand, right, the backstory of how did all this come about?
Oh, wow. First of all, I want to apologize for my accent if I speak too fast. Just I know it can grate on people, so apologies for anybody listening. I'll try and keep my accent as neutral as possible. So I actually had a pretty standard background. I studied law because I was rubbish at drawing, and then I fell into finance, went into wealth management, corporate banking, and I was doing it for 10 years. And I don't know if anybody else here can relate when you're sitting in the office and you're like, wow, I want to be outside. And you're looking out the window and you see all these people on the grass, probably unemployed, right? And I just knew that I wanted to travel more and work remotely and have a bit more freedom, but I just didn't know how. And so I went through a series of Googling best jobs online and then, went through a journey of different side hustles, proofreading, freelance writing, virtual assisting, and eventually ended up with blogging. And I remember my first real money when I that I earned was made when I was climbing up to Everest Base Camp. And so I actually had a trip to Everest Base Camp and I got a contract for proofreading. And I remember thinking, I can't give up this money. It's a lot of money for me at the time. And I told myself, if I could climb up to Everest Base Camp and continue working, I could do this. And it's been easier since. And so I kind of went through this journey of side hustles and then ended up blogging and then started my first blog, which is about side hustles and, personal finance. And then that did very well. And then now I have 6 blogs. I manage a portfolio of blogs, have a small team, and I've just hired my husband. So that's pretty exciting. So
Yeah,
here I
no,
am.
that's awesome. And I wanted to ask you that question because I was inspired when we first talked, just and I something that clicked for me was if I can hike Everest, the base camp, like this is gonna be, it's just gonna get easier and easier. So that's and that helps too, just understanding your background is always good for, people to understand, well, why the finance background, right? And why do you try to help people there? And it's just all of those different paths that I think is really useful, which which I'm excited to dive deeper into. But I think first, you've talked about traveling, right, and working remotely and living that digital nomad lifestyle. So first off, like how often per year are you traveling and living that lifestyle? And then how do you balance work and travel or working remotely when you're traveling?
Okay, so I'd say I'd probably travel 6 months a year. I'm currently in Malaysia. I've just moved from Ireland. I lived in Ireland. And I'd say about 6 months a year I would spend traveling. But when I say travel, I'm still working, right? People think travel means just a holiday. Or as Americans say, vacation,
Yeah.
Yeah, like, oh, that's wrong. When I travel, I think it's a privilege that I can still work when I travel. And so in line with that, I think what's really helped me balance work and travel 6 months a year is firstly, I set up my business to have as many passive income sources as possible, right? At the beginning, we're going to have active income sources. Your time's going to be taken up. But I've always in my head try to aim in the long run for passive income sources. We can go into more detail what they are. And so, in line with that, also, I'm very, very strict about meetings and minimal active income. So, with my team, if I can send a voice note, if I can send an email, we don't do meetings. And I understand, like, I like to hire a lot of women, a lot of parents, people who need flexibility. I want to respect their time, right? Time is money and energy is money. So I try to avoid meetings as much as possible, send training videos instead of meetings. And also, if I do have active income, it's minimal. So once a year, I'll open coaching. That's it. And the rest of my income sources are quite passive.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Well, I feel special that I'm getting to spend 30 minutes to
Uh,
an hour with you that we're going to take a meeting. But no, I agree with you. I'm in the same boat for I think voice notes are some of the most underrated ways, and sometimes I'll send those to friends and they're like, "Wow, I'm so glad you sent that." Like I like doing this, so like in business, that's one way that I love to do it, but I think you said it best. I'm excited. I just hired my second virtual assistant, and like it's playing that long run game that it is at first you're going to grind it out, but I think like you said, when you're traveling, it's not you're waking up and you're working 12-hour days like you might be right when you're starting out in a business. You're building out those processes, you're building out those systems, right? You're building out videos where those are already in place for when someone comes on board. So no, I agree. And I think that's something when people look at how do you build when you say, oh, I have 6 blogs, they're probably like, do you sleep? And it's like, no, you have to build it and you have to build those processes, and it happens over time. So no, I love to hear that. Are there specific challenges or anything that you face, and it could be, now it seems like you have a nice well-oiled machine going, but like at first, right, when someone's starting out doing that, what were some of the challenges you faced?
I think certainly at the beginning, especially with starting side hustles or a blog, you're going to face this feeling of, wow, this is taking so long, right? You're going to look at everybody else and be like, they seem to have it all figured out. I certainly felt that. It took me a good 2 years to get my blog up and running and successful. I failed a lot of the way. I didn't have a big budget, so a lot of people were able, and I didn't know anybody in the blogging community. Nowadays, there's so many blogging communities. Back in the day, it was just me, living La Vida Broca, right? Traveling and traveling and trying to figure this blog thing out. So if you're feeling that right now and you're like, man, I just don't know, what should I do? This, should I do that? Should I? It's normal. And just know that I actually just created a video this morning. I said, we think success is in the big moments, in the big actions. Actually, if you just do one small thing every day and stick at it, it will work out eventually. Okay. So the first challenge was comparisonitis, overwhelm, and not knowing where to begin. But if you stick at it long enough, it will eventually ride out and you'll figure it'll click.
Yeah, yeah, no, well said. And I think it's just being boring, doing the same things over and over and over, and consistency, and just getting 1% better every day. That's something I try to do, and I think it's very important because, right, if you sit there and you have analysis paralysis, right, you're never going to do it if you compare it. And I heard this on a podcast just around from a mindset coach. It's like, don't compare yourself. You're at step 2. Don't compare yourself to someone who's at step 497, right? When they were at step 2, you don't see everything that's going on, and don't give up just then. And I think just going back to talking about another blogger, Lana, when she was on, she was like, I sat there for 2 years and didn't post anything because I had analysis paralysis. And I'm the exact opposite, where I take action. I'm like, it's going to be god awful for the first like 3 months, but guess what? I'm getting in the cycle, and I'm going to take little pieces, learn from experts like yourself, learn from other experts, just all over, and just getting started and doing it. And that's the nice thing. And that's people like yourself who do coaching, right? You've made the mistakes and you're like, don't make the same mistakes. Use my lessons learned, right? Time is money, right? Expedite that. And I mean, that's the biggest value that I see, is because if you spend 6 to 9 months trying to figure it out versus saying, wow, here's a blueprint of someone who's done it, who has 6 of them. Yeah, I mean, it's well worth it. And by the way, I don't have any affiliates with Aisha. I know I'm selling her big right now, but
Thanks
but
for
it is
asking.
truly valuable. I can say, just building something over the past year, like it is very valuable to have people like that, like yourself, who really make that impact and help.
I wish I had that, because you end up buying all these expensive courses, making mistakes. And another thing that I feel like, especially in the blogging world, if you want to start a blog and get paid to write and share your travels, is we don't know what goes on behind the scenes, right? So I remember when I started, I'd read these blogging income reports and hear about, oh, I made 30,000 bucks in 6 months. And I was 6 months in with zero within the minus. I was like, what am I doing wrong? But then you find out later it's her fifth blog. She has a
Hmm.
husband who's in tech. She's got digital marketing experience. Don't compare yourself because you don't know the full picture. Like, success is relative, right? You might be like, well, Asha has 6 blogs, full-time income from her blogs, but this is my sixth blog, right? So if I can make money within the first 6 months, first 3 months from my blogs because I had that experience. So don't, you might read these income reports and look at others and think, oh man, I suck. If you are taking action, and hey, if you're listening to this, you're already one
Yeah,
step ahead, right? Because Ross is the best.
trying. I just ask smart people questions and try to sound smart. No, I'm kidding.
No, you are smart. You are.
Yeah, no, I think too. I mean, one of the things I was, you started talking about starting to earn income from it. You gave some of that advice for people just starting out, but are there different revenue streams? When you start to think about blogging, people may say, oh, they might just go click and go to a restaurant, or they might go to this. What are the different revenue streams that people can take advantage of?
Okay, that's a really good question. Okay, so it obviously depends on active and passive. I'm gonna walk you through now. So we have advertising revenue. That's quite passive. So we have companies like Mediavine, Raptive, Mediavine Journey, She Media. They basically pay you every time someone reads your blog. It's wild because I used to think someone needed to click on an ad, but actually what they'll do is when you have traffic, and there are certain traffic thresholds, they will place ads on your blog and they will handle everything for you. They literally do everything for you. And every month, They will say, okay, this many people saw the ad, read your blog, and they'll pay you like a salary, and it just gets credited into your account. It's glorious and it's super passive. So, when I'm if I'm taking a couple of weeks off to go hiking or whatever, I'll just get that credit into my account. So this advertising revenue is very passive. Then another passive revenue stream is affiliates, where you get paid a commission when someone buys something using your referral link at no extra cost to the buyer. I might recommend, for example, I go to Bali, I stayed in a really nice, affordable villa with a pool, and I said, hey, listen, this place is awesome. Here's where you can go on booking.com and no extra cost to you. So that's affiliates. Quite passive because you could be in Zimbabwe and
Yeah.
someone still click it, buy it, and
Yep.
you still earn. And I think another one that's quite passive, which initially feels quite active, is digital products. So you listening here right now, also you, Ross, you have knowledge that has been built up since the day you were born. You might think, oh, it's not valuable. Your experiences are really valuable. You have skills. And I know, Ross, you have a really useful course, right?
Hmm.
On how to plan your itinerary. So digital products are a way for you to monetize your skills and your experience, and you create it once. Like I have courses I created 2, 3 years ago, still selling today. So those are the more like passive revenue sources. Recently, I've been quite interested to learn about the sponsorship revenue. I never used to chase sponsorship revenue. I used to actually kind of I don't want to be seen as an influencer. I have this like
Hmm.
negative perception. I was like, I'm not an influencer. I'm like, I barely comb my hair, guys. I can't be an influencer. But recently, there's been a real surge in sponsorship revenue, especially with newsletters, my email community. And what they will do is they will find people and brands that want to be featured on your blog or on your socials, and they will pay you a fee for mentioning them and talking about them and collaborating. So those are some of the revenue streams. And then active, I guess there's coaching, there's consulting, there's freelance writing, proofreading, editing. Those are some examples.
There's a lot. So if you
Yeah.
are trying to get started, you got like a starting five and then another couple. So go. I think that's. But no, you bring up a lot of great points. And when I first even thought about this, it was like I have, like you said, you have all this knowledge, but it's like, how do you bundle all of that up? I think one thing is not having, and one, as people who start business entrepreneurs, sometimes you get shiny object syndrome and you're like, oh, I need to do this person does this person does that. But for example, for affiliates, it's focusing in on, like you said, if you're going to Bali and you stay at this very cool place, having that link and focusing in on that, like what can you provide value for? I've been on a ton of trips. I have, I've been on over 100 trips in the past 10 years, planned all of them for groups, couples, individuals, right? And like have stated, and one of my favorite things to do is finding a very unique experience, whether that's an Airbnb, a Verbo, right? Staying at a very cool hotel, but taking that and then providing affiliate links for that. And it makes it so when you do have a blog, you can then post that in there and then have people. So that's just like, and I'm starting out there. So I think that's been helpful. But from a digital product standpoint, going back and forth, if you are listening, it's, do you want to do one-on-one coaching, and do you need to build up that book of business to get some of that experience, or have you done it? And I mean, the nice thing about digital product and digital courses, it's scalable and you're providing a lot of value and you're getting your word out to the masses. And you're not, I mean, one-on-one coaching maybe for me would be great, but you're getting that out to the masses is great because you're providing value to so many more people, right? And then you're being able to continually just build and build and build and get more word out. So yeah, that's like you mentioned, I have something that helps people learn how to really from start to finish, decide where they want to go, why do they want to go there, and giving them that roadmap and blueprint of what have they liked on vacation in the past, what don't they like, how much PTO, how much money, how much time, do they have rewards, do they have different credit cards that they could use some of those miles, and then taking that from start to finish on how to leverage AI. I mean, I wish I had that 10, 5, 3 years ago, right? Leverage all the AI tools that I've been nerding out on for the past 18 months of like, you can go from weeks or months of mapping out your trip to doing it in hours and giving them the blueprint there. So yeah, I agree. I think it's great. And it's valuable. I wish I knew that when I was starting out, that there's so many different ways. So yeah, I mean, this is, I'm learning just from this
Mhm.
conversation a ton. So for people who are, don't try to go at it all at once. I think figure out what's a good first step. And then from there, you're going to build off of it. And over time, right? It's just doing, like we've said, getting 1% better, being consistent, learning, talking to the right people, asking the right questions. And yeah, you'll be on your way.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point because I think a mistake a lot of people make is they try and do everything at once. So if you've heard all these revenue sources, you're like, oh, I want to do them all, right? I'd say pick one. Pick
Mhm.
one and do that well, and then layer it. So I didn't earn from these all in one go. I started with one, mastered that, and then I layered it and layered it and layered it later on when as I got more experience. So I think that's really valuable. And also, if you're like, well, what do I teach? What can I create? Like, you might think here's something that's really helped me is I feel sometimes you can teach the same thing as somebody else, but they will buy from you because it's you, right? So, for example, Ross, you have a Jordan, you have a Jordan basketball top behind you. You love basketball. There's something unique about you and the way you interact with your listeners and your experience that no someone else can never have that lived experience. So somebody else could sell exactly what you're selling, but they can't give it that Ross flavor, right? So never worry about competition because that was certainly something I said, my voice is not important enough. So if you're hearing this, you're like, well, I have this, but everyone else is doing it. That doesn't matter. If someone's going to relate to you, you might be a stay-at-home mom, you might be you might single mom, you might be, you don't might not you may not want kids. Different people are going to relate to you, and they will buy your product because of you.
Yeah, no, perfectly said. And I think for people, it's just like taking a step back and looking at who do you follow, right? What brands do you connect with? Why do you like those? And that's real, right? They bring that unique kind of sizzle, whatever they bring, and that's something that you like. Like if you are giving that value to people, at the end of the day, it's people buy from people that they like, or people work with people that they like. And it's not like you're going to work with someone that you don't want to have to, right, spend 30 minutes with if you are doing that. So no, it's well said. And yeah, no, I love it. I think one thing too, and I've had friends on who have traveled solo, girl and guy, two separate podcasts. But they did it, they've gone on a couple trips. She went on a 3-week trip to 11 cities over Europe, and it was her first time. And she kind of she got laid off from her job and was like, you know what, screw it, I'm just going to go. So I think it would be good, since you've done it a lot, you travel a lot, just to hear, what are some of those top solo safety tips?
Okay, great segue. So, I when I started traveling, I think I started traveling as a young girl and like a backpacker, right? And as time has gone on, I still travel, but I travel differently. But here are some of the mistakes I made and some tips, right? So, firstly, especially if you are, well, it's for men too, especially if you're in more dangerous countries, I have a rule where I always travel during daylight, okay? Because if you arrive at night, there's so much out of your control. And so many things can go wrong. And that's happened to me where I've taken the cheaper flight, and then arrived at midnight. And then it's like, well, how do I get to my accommodation? The bus is quite dangerous. And so I would say if you're a female especially, have the rule of paying a bit extra, always travel during daylight. Okay. And another thing is I used to really try and save money in accommodation and end up booking somewhere really far from town. But actually, if you pay a bit extra, you can save money on transport costs. You can have more options for food. So it's okay to pay a bit more for accommodation if it's in the center, if you're saving on transport costs. Another thing I do is I write my essential contact details on a piece of paper because if your electronics get robbed, if your passport gets robbed, you need to have something physical on you to call some people to call. I also do this thing now with eSIMs, it's better, but like especially when I'm traveling alone, I make sure I get a SIM as soon as I get to the airport because you might get in a taxi and be like, where is he taking me? You want to be able to track it, right? So
Yeah.
having phone communication, a Wi-Fi immediately at the airport. I always got a SIM, now you can get eSIMs. Another thing is duplicate your passport. So when you're traveling, you want to avoid bringing your passport out and about. Have a photocopy of your passport, keep your passport at home. bring your photocopy. Another thing is just for women especially, when you go to certain cultures, we sometimes we may misread the culture. I always bring a scarf, like a loose fitting scarf to just wear on my neck in case I'm feeling like the locals are uncomfortable to cover up a bit. I have two more tips, and one is we want to be nice, we want to be polite, and we want to be courteous, and we want to be a good representation of our country. But that's led me to a lot of trouble because sometimes people might misread your friendliness. And it's okay to seem rude and have boundaries if it's for your safety. So sometimes I feel like in the past where I've got into trouble where I was like, oh, I don't want to be rude. When someone's clearly being disrespectful or crossing my boundaries, it's okay to say, no, I don't want to go, or no, I'm not comfortable with that, and come across as rude because that could save your life. Okay.
Yeah.
And finally, something I do is I still do get quite anxious when I'm traveling alone. And when I arrive in a country, for some reason, the journey from the airport to the accommodation really makes me anxious because it's like you're new, the taxi driver gonna swoop me away. And so what I do is I actually Google image the airport and the journey. And so I'll go and I'll look at the journey, I'll look at the airport, I'll look and I'll visually look at the journey to make me familiar so I get my bearings. These are some examples. What about you, Ross? Do you have any tips?
Those no, those are great. The eSIM, I have not done that. I think that's great. One thing, and I like the traveling during daylight versus nighttime. I feel like I haven't traveled alone enough outside of the States where, I've had to worry about that, but I always like to book transports. Like I've started to just if you're staying at a hotel or you're staying in an Airbnb, seeing if they have a taxi person or just, I mean, you can get Uber and everything, but I think sometimes like just if you're going to places that are, it's kind of madness at the airport, just working with that host because then okay, this is someone that's been vetted, right? They have, you're going through that process. I always have the routes already mapped out on Google Maps. So I'll put that in when we get there just in case, right? We're going through somewhere that doesn't have good service. That way you can see like, are we going the right way? That's one of my favorites. I love the passport thing. I never bring my passport out. I always, right, I make sure to take a picture of that. Same thing with ID. I also have a backup expired ID and a paper ID just in case. So one thing I do too, and this isn't even traveling abroad, this is just traveling within the States. I always bring those backups. I always bring a passport just in case I lose my ID because if that happens, then got to get on a flight the next day. I always just plan for what's the worst case scenario, because right, I've had friends who have lost their IDs during a trip, and I don't want to be having to scramble like, okay, this is going to ruin that. Also, one thing too, if you are traveling, if you're from the States, searching, where is the closest embassy to where you're going to be at. That way, in case, and I had a guest who came on where their passports got stolen in the first, I think it was like 3 days. And luckily they had Googled and knew where the closest US embassy was. And I had a friend who actually came on who was in Mexico City who he got pickpocketed at a game and he didn't have a phone. I think he may have gotten a burner, but that eSIM is really, that's a good tip. But yeah, I would say those are the main ones. Also, I'm always I'm team carry on. I'm a very minimalist packer just because when we travel with groups, getting all of that luggage, if you're trying to get a cab or you're trying to get an Uber, sometimes if you have 4 or 5 people that all bring checks bags, it's gonna be harder to find that. And then also if you're traveling, that's if you have any layovers, that's gonna be if you lose luggage, then your vacation doesn't start off great. So I'm team carry on and fitting it in there. And if you're, I think a lot of people are overwhelmed, and I was one of these people who at first I was like, oh, I'm just gonna bring everything. And you realize like I wear half the stuff that I bring, right? I don't need all those different shoes. I need a pair of white sneakers, walking sneakers, and if I'm going somewhere warm, just flip flops. But really packing those and prior to your trip, reaching out to the Airbnb host, reaching out to, if you're staying at the hotel, seeing if there is any sort of laundry services, right? Dry cleaners, like usually those are pretty cheap. So just doing that, a little bit of research prior is going to save you potential headaches if you do lose your luggage or having to lug around a really big bag. So those, I would say those are probably now new. And now the um, Apple AirTags now with some of the airlines is big. But I think just bringing those and just setting yourself up for success. And I always plan for the worst because something's always going to go wrong. It might not be that big, but yeah, I would say those are a few of my favorites. Pretty simple, but lessons learned over the years.
Effective though, very effective.
Yeah, I mean that's the goal is be efficient, keep it simple, and yeah. But you've been doing it a while. I think for women who are they might be hesitant to get started traveling alone, but they want to give it a try, but don't really know where to start. Like, what advice would you have for them?
Okay, so I'm just trying to remember me as an 18-year-old, right? So you kind of you hear about all these cases and you get like, oh my God, I'm gonna get kidnapped. So I would say first of all, start local, right? So if you're from the US or wherever you are, go travel solo to the next state, you know? I would and go alone and experience it. Don't, go from here, Malaysia to Mexico City, you know? So I would say start local. And secondly, there's actually really good companies out there like Intrepid Travel, G Adventures that allow you to travel solo but meet people in groups, right? So I went on a cycling trip for 10 days in Italy by myself. Turned up alone, didn't know a single soul, but I went with one of those companies. I think it was Intrepid, and they basically allowed me to meet other people who are also traveling solo. And it's a way for you to make friends, have your own space, adventure through the world. Some people, when I was younger, certainly I went to hostels, you can get some really good hostels nowadays. And the hostels will run experiences and they will run events so you can meet people and socialize there. Um, and also, I think that when you might be listening to this and thinking of everything that can go wrong. Traveling solo for me changed my life because it builds this when you're traveling alone and you're stepping into the airport, you just have to rely on yourself. You can't ask anybody, what do you think? Or it's all about what you want and what you think. And you will start to develop skills that will make you more independent, more confident, and you will come back a changed person. And you won't even realize it. But I have to say, like, traveling solo shaped me. And sometimes I need like a blast of, sometimes when I feel like I've been too comfortable, I will go travel solo and it will sharpen my senses. And I come back and my business is more successful for it. My friendship groups, and I feel like I'm more confident and successful because I have those skills to rely on myself. You will always have you. I mean, and it sounds really cheesy, but you are enough. Your knowledge and your skills are enough. If you can keep yourself alive
Yeah.
when traveling alone, you can tackle life in your home country. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, no, 100%. A couple points to touch on is, I mean, first off, you're dealing with potential adversity and you're having to be present in that moment and figure out like, well, what if this happens? Like, it's on me. Like, I got to figure this out. So it brings, and then you, like you said, it changes your perspective. So when you come back and you see different things too, you experience a completely different world. And I think that's one thing a lot of people in the States, like, luckily a lot of my friends have had the benefit of me planning our trips and going. But outside of that, like not many people have gone abroad and like there's just a whole nother world out there and everyone's kind of stuck in the bubble of like, oh, well, this and that. And it's like if you go out and you get to experience those things, you start to have a different perspective. You start to appreciate a lot of the little things and you don't sweat like, yeah, you're going to get caught up sometimes in work, but also like you don't sweat some of the small stuff. You're like, well, I have a roof over my head. I'm right. I have food on the table. Like I'm not having to deal with this. Like there's just so many different things. And over time that starts to compound and you start to realize a lot of those things. And yeah, I mean, you said it perfectly. It's this, you start to become more independent and you get different confidence and you just have a different perspective on life because you've seen a lot of those different areas of the world. And one thing I want to go back to too is hostels. I think if you're traveling solo for the first time, don't go watch the movie Hostel because that's kind of overblown. Also, don't go watch Taken. Like I don't recommend that before you before you go travel solo. But I stay in hostels for probably the first 4 or 5 years of traveling, and it's great. We were with a group of guys, but like I actually studied abroad in Ireland for 3 weeks, which I loved. I know your husband's from there, but we stayed in Galway for 2 weeks, and we stayed in Dublin for a week, and it was my first time staying in hostels. And going over to Europe, and it was just an amazing experience. Like, sure, would I have rather had my own bed than staying with six dudes and in six bunk beds, one bathroom? Yeah, but it was an experience that now I remember. And then you stay in those. But from an experience standpoint, if you're going solo, they're going to make those trips, right? Everyone who's going is wanting to hang out there. They're wanting to do something, and usually they're going to be just like you, just wanting to travel, and you're going to build some relationships off that. So yeah, my buddy who travels solo, he's big on hostels. I am too. They're not very big in the States, but if you haven't, been to Europe, like I highly suggest staying in one. And you don't have to stay in a 32 person mixed hostel, right? Maybe if you want to have your own privacy, you can get your own solo room, but it's just nice because you have a common area, there's experiences. That's what they do daily, so they can really show you a good time. So a lot of good points there that you made. And yeah, I love that advice.
And also on the topic of hostels, like especially in Southeast Asia, if you're interested in Southeast Asia, like there's plenty of really nice hostels actually, like there are really crappy ones, but I've stayed in hostels where, you have a little curtain, you have your privacy, and it's got aircon. And so it really depends if you pay a bit more. People have this image of a 16. I mean, I've stayed in those kind of hostels in the full moon party in a when I didn't have much money, but in Thailand, but I've also stayed in some really good hostels that are actually better quality than some hotels, right? And I want you to imagine you arrive in a foreign country, you arrive at a hostel and you're nervous and you sit down. This is a real experience. Someone says, and I remember someone says, "Hey, we're gonna go to check out some waterfalls. We're gonna go on motorbikes. Do you want to join us?" I would have never done that by myself. But
Yeah.
now I, got on the back of someone's motorbike. Everybody's in a group. We're a whole crew. We're getting food. Everyone's having a good time. And it's like you start to make friends and you learn about new places together. So I really recommend that. And that's great advice for us.
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna have to have you send me the hostel from the full moon party in Thailand. I need to send that to my fiance and say, "Hey, we're staying here for the honeymoon." No, I'm joking.
It was bright pink. It was like the what those Barbie mansions. It was like
Oh my
disco light.
God.
It was awful. It was awful. It was awful. Don't do that. She'll
Nah,
divorce you
that's
before you're married.
no, no, no. Trust me, no. We're actually so we're going to Thailand and we're doing Bangkok for a night, we're doing Chiang Mai for 3 nights, and then we're doing Phuket for four. We're going to the PP Islands for two and doing Phuket. But yeah, we're staying at a couple Hyatts on points, so we're excited for that. We yeah, we
Awesome.
yeah, no, we're definitely excited for that. On the topic of cool destinations, you've been a lot of places. Like, what are some places you'd say are your favorites?
So interestingly, the Balkans in Bosnia and Herzegovina. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that wrong. It's in the Balkans, and I found that to be an amazing place. I've been there four, 5 times. I went there initially. I'm trying to think. I think I went there skiing. I went there because it was quite affordable to ski. And it's so affordable, good, it's good snow. Went there skiing and loved it so much. I went there hiking because I'm a big hiker. And I remember there was this one experience where I remember some guy commented on a mountain because I used to live in New Zealand, and he was like, "Oh, mountain, we're connected over mountains." And he's like, "Oh, I'm from Bosnia. I'm the head of a mountaineering club." And I remember I went at that time I went with some of my siblings, so I wasn't totally alone. And we turned and he said, "Let's meet." And I thought, he's gonna kill us. We're definitely gonna die. This is the Taken part two, right? You turn out, and I remember telling my siblings and I, we're like, we're gonna have a secret word in case it looks like we're gonna be kidnapped, like pineapple or something. So he was talking and he was like, "Oh, we've got our overnight hike tonight. We've got overnight hike. You're welcome to join." And he seemed really genuine. And so we didn't say the word pineapple. And that was an incredible experience. They threw us all in the back of a truck with all his mates, women and men, brought us up this mountain, cooked for us, gave us accommodation, brought us swimming, and they just gave us so much hospitality and we made lifelong friends. So I'm a real fan of Bosnia and Herzegovina. I Also went motorbiking, and if you ever go to Vietnam in the north, Ha Giang, you can actually rent, you can either sit on the back of a motorbike or you can rent your own motorbike. I like motorbiking. And I went around a month just backpack on my back on my motorbike, motorbiking around different parts of Vietnam. That was pretty exciting. And I think I mentioned Everest Base Trip, and more recently, I've kind of got into cycling, right? And I used to have a real fear of cycling. Spend some time in Asia, you won't have any more fears with cycling or driving. You will develop a tolerance to bad driving. So I moved to Ireland and I did a cycling trip and just went round Kilkenny and Kerry, cycling, through Ireland, and that was pretty incredible. So there's just some that come to mind.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, when you said when you went to Italy and did a 10-day cycling trip by yourself, I was like, oh, I didn't know she cycled. I didn't know if you just went, you're like, hey, I'm gonna try it. So that makes a little bit more sense. Vietnam's definitely up there on my list. And then so I'm guessing do you ski a good amount or did you used to ski?
Actually, Ross, believe it or not, I didn't grow up skiing, right? I'm half Malaysian and half English, so it's not no snow in Malaysia. I moved to New Zealand and everybody was skiing, so I just picked it up. But believe it or not, I was a bit of an idiot. I didn't know how to ski at the time, and I tried a ski jump. I landed on my back, fractured my back, couldn't walk for about 6 months.
Oh wow.
Anyway, fast forward, I
Wow.
can walk now. I can walk now. And I remember that moment when I was so terrified because I said, I can actually give up skiing now. So, but the moral of the story is you don't need to be a good skier to ski.
Yeah.
That's the moral of the story. I remember I was so scared because I was like, what if it happens again? I was like, well, I won't do another ski jump. But you've got to overcome that fear and get back on the horse, right? So I do like skiing. I'm not good at it, but I like skiing. Bosnia is amazing. The Balkans. I remember Poland, Turkey, less conventional
hmm
places where because skiing can be quite expensive. Like you ski in
Yeah,
the Alps, right?
yeah, come to the States. It's
Yeah, it's
crazy.
correct. If you love skiing and you want to try, I remember I did this. I kind of like did some analysis. Poland, Turkey, what's that? Banksko. These are kind of offbeat places where super affordable, super fun, where you could try skiing.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, my buddy went to one of my close friends who we go on. I mean, we've done 9 annual snowboarding trips. I grew up, my parents put me on skis when I was like 4 in Colorado, and so I learned how to ski. I transitioned I thought everyone said snowboarding was cool, moved into snowboarding. So I snowboard now, but we've had an annual trip for the past 9 years. This year would be the 10th, but unfortunately, I did not get the go ahead prior to the wedding because my fiance she doesn't want me walking down in a boot or whatever. She's like, I don't need you getting injured. So we toyed with the idea of possibly going down to South America since the seasons have changed. But yeah, New Zealand, I ask because I've heard it has really good skiing, and I see that. That's on. I think it's on the Icon Pass, and then it's on social media. And I'm always looking for like I've done like pretty much everywhere in the US that I want to do. Done Whistler in Canada, which is my favorite. But now I'm like, okay, I've heard great things about Japan. My buddy went there. I've heard good things about New Zealand. So that's why I ask. And it's a little bit of a hike for us to get over there, but
Definitely.
I think it's worth it. But that's pretty cool. I did not know that about Bosnia and the Balkans and even Turkey and Poland. That's interesting. I was not aware of that.
Yeah, I mean, people. I didn't know about it until I went to Bosnia, and I realized, oh, like I think I spent the entire trip like $600 for
Wow.
skiing. Yeah, for skiing for a couple of weeks. And the
Wow.
food's amazing. Like, in Bosnia, right? When you go down, in most like in the French Alps, you get these little cafes. I remember I skied to like a cafe and there was like Balkan like pop music, grilled meat, like everybody standing around grilled meat, hot chocolate. It was so random. It was like a party in the middle of the mountain. And like their meat, in the Balkans, they know how to cook meat, right? And I'm sure Americans are very good at cooking meat too. Apologies to the vegans, vegetarian, no offense, It's just, they do know how to cook their meat. And so I remember just having the smell. And you just rock up, like, would you like some meat? Yes, and it's amazing. Honestly, I really recommend it. It's great.
That's funny. That's like a scene out of a movie. That was a very good imitation, but I'm sure that's exactly I'm sure that's exactly how it happened. That's too
Yeah,
funny.
they're amazing people. They sound really like I remember like, what we got stopped by the police, right? And they sound really firm and determined, but they're so nice. Go left, go right, go straight. You're like, but they're just genuinely nice people. But you just have to just get used to they don't smile much. They take their time to get to know you. It's just a different culture.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. I need to get over there and try it. That's I now I'm intrigued and I'm motivated just so I can see that invitation and
Oh
and get a
God,
good.
it's a terrible invitation. Anyone in the back was listening to me they would have strangled me now. I'm really sorry. Oh God.
That's funny. Well, I know you've traveled a lot of different places. And I know when we were talking, you had said, it helps you appreciate your home country more and just being flexible, right? And just the different cultures. And you talked about it a little bit earlier, just around solo travel, but I think just overall, just, how do you feel like travel's really changed your perspective and just really impacted your work life as well as your personal life and outlook on life?
I think threefold actually. Firstly, it's given me a real appreciation of my privilege. Traveling is a privilege, right? Not everybody can afford to travel. And understanding that different people have different budgets, even when it comes to travel and lifestyles. And so, what you might be like, oh, you might be worrying about this petty thing, right? And you go to, parts of Southeast Asia where they're literally trying to find the next meal, right? And
Hmm.
it's and giving you the awareness of privilege in terms of rights, in terms of language, being able to speak English is a privilege. The opportunities we get with jobs, as a woman, some countries you don't have that privilege of having a voice,
Hmm.
and having to, retreat a bit more. So just the privilege and that we have, and the rights and the freedom we have, especially in different parts of the world, right, where you get more than others. And number two is that leads into gratitude because it's so easy to get caught up in the my life sucks right now. This people, I know a lot of people have different opinions about politics, money, religion, but it's like you go to different countries where they're just trying to survive, right? Like we have our basic needs met, a lot of us, not all of us, right?
Hmm.
And it's giving me that sense of, hey, I have food on the table, I can afford to travel, I have a loved one. And finally, it's given me an openness to religion and culture because you could be sitting here right now being taught one religion, one culture, and thinking, I'm right, you're wrong. And going to a completely like different culture, like so, I'm half Asian and my husband's Irish, and I've got a multicultural family, but you go into Ireland where it's a totally different religion, and in Malaysia it's a totally different religion, and both can be right. We can
Hmm.
both have different opinions and religions and cultures, and we can sit here and say, that's okay. We can
Yeah.
still respect and be kind to each other. And I feel like nowadays a lot of the problems in the world, I'm not going to go on about this, but are caused by lack of understanding. We can both be right. You
Hmm.
can have your opinion, I can have it. And being kinder. I feel like seeing how other people are really good people, different religion, different culture, different political opinion, and that's okay. And that's
Yeah.
helped me become more open.
Yeah, no, that's perfectly said, and I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier in the episode. Is just it gives you that different perspective, and it helps you appreciate the little things, and over time that compounds. And as you go to different countries, different parts of the world, that's it's truly going to make you see differently and have that different perspective. So I couldn't agree more. One thing I did want to touch on, that I forgot to ask you earlier in the episode, just kind of going back to really, because I know you had the background in banking, right? You also help people, right, as they start to travel. And when we started talking about, some budgets, right? Some people might not have the means of traveling. Thinking about, what also can you help people around, keeping the money that they earn, right? Any sort of financial freedom, like investing type advice, those type of things. 'Cause I know that's something that you work with people on, and some of my audience is, they've either recently had kids, they're expecting kids, they were full-time workers, and then now they're either full-time moms or they're trying to figure out, right, hey, this was really like my lifestyle. This was my career. This was my identity. Now I'm becoming a mom. And then maybe after a couple years, they want to move back into working. Like, how do you help people there, or do you have any advice there for, if they're trying to figure out, hey, how do I translate this skill that I had? Maybe they were a teacher, maybe they were this, and then now create a different type of income doing that. And then also, how do I keep that money?
Okay, so that's twofold, right? So what you will realize as you continue, if you once you start the journey of, okay, I want to monetize my skills, all the skills you have can be monetized. And I know you're not gonna believe me, but as somebody who has done many different online jobs, if you are good at talking, did you know there's a platform that actually pays you? Here's an example that pays you to talk and chat to people in English. They just want conversational practice. You log on to this platform and you just chat to another person in the world who wants to practice, and they pay you. Literally, you get paid per minute. That's an
Wow.
example, right? So yeah, it's like you could be sitting in a, you could be at home, you could have your baby with you and be like, do you know what? I just want to earn some extra money. And it's not sleazy. There's a genuine people
Yeah.
wanting to chat and conversate. And like there are so many. I would start by, I mean, I do teach people with my blog outandbeyond.com on the different side hustles. So if you love writing, you can earn very well from freelance writing, proofreading, virtual assisting, social media management. So I would say I would Google this or come to me, send me a message. Happy to help. Say, what online job can I do with X skill? Start there. Okay. You'll get a range of jobs coming up. From there, you can pick one and narrow down. And so I would say, first of all, learn how to move that existing skill you have into something which can increase your income or just have an income and an online income, a remote income. That's what I did. And then the second piece of, you know, a lot of people think that when you start a business, you have to spend all this money, like buy a new laptop. And honestly, when I first started, I bought a refurbished Mac. I bought a secondhand Mac. You do not need all this expensive software. You can bootstrap it. Keep your costs low, keep your income high. And if you have extra, invest it. And I know Ross,
Mhm.
you're more, quite experienced on this. I like to invest in low cost index funds like Vanguard. But the simple matter is, increase your income. How do you do that? Find your skill, monetize a skill, keep your costs low. Don't get caught into this. You need to buy the newest camera. No, bootstrap it. Keep it basic. Lower your cost, increase your income, pay for your costs, take the money, invest it into low cost, less risky funds like index funds. And that's what I do.
Yeah. No, that's perfectly said. And yeah, I mean, I got this microphone like, I don't know, a couple months ago. I was just going straight off my laptop. I don't the camera I have is my MacBook. I got a little ring light that sometimes dies on me halfway through, even if it's charged. So like it's you don't it no, but I agree. It's you don't have to go out and get all this crazy stuff when you get started, right? You and nowadays with phones, I mean, it's sometimes the phones are just as good as some of the cameras. I mean, it's crazy now with some of the new iPhones and other phones. So it's really just figuring out what can you do, get started, right? Start creating that content, and then it's don't spend more than you make, and then if you make more, invest it, because when you're talking about passive income, this is not financial advice, but it's right when you're talking about passive income, that's the best way. When the clock, Warren Buffett said, he just had more time, right? The dude started investing when he was like before he was 10 years old. And that's why he's super rich, because he had 80 years of compound interest. And if you just keep doing that and adding to it, that's going to help you sleep better at night. And also, it's going to give you more confidence, honestly, and help you learn more about business too. You're going to learn about the different companies that you invest in, which is ultimately going to make you a better business owner, right? Give you different creative ideas, which then just goes back to travel. You compound all of that, and then you end up having six blogs and just coming on podcasts and talking like Aisha is. So that's that's my motivation to round us out.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think you're doing all the right things, Ross. I think that it's such a pleasure to talk to somebody. I mean, I think you're super organized. You're way more organized than me. Like Ross has got it going on, guys. Like he's got everything all covered. I'm not as organized as him, but listen, start with one small step. You might hear this today, and be like, man, Ross is awesome. I want to be like him. But I think that where you are right now, just take the first small step and the second small step. And you have the rest of your life. You have time. Don't panic. You have time. If this is really what you want to do with all your experience, with all your knowledge, you will get there. Okay, you can get there.
Perfectly said. And yeah, trust me, this, I was sitting on a computer at 8 p.m. trying to figure out how I was going to drive around the Mid-Atlantic for a sales territory when I was 24. So that's kind of how all this started. And then thank God for Google Maps now, and but then it was all that. And then I was like, hey, who wants to go on a snowboarding trip out to Colorado? Then it was like, hey, let's go to Oktoberfest in Amsterdam. And the pictures might seem good, but we were trying to figure it out and still trying to figure it out. So I think it's just getting started and talking to the right people and asking the right questions. And at the end of the day, just having fun and being creative with it. And people will find a way to, make a living off that or just learn something new, worst case. So really
Yeah.
appreciate you coming on. One question I always like to ask too, is there anyone else that you recommend in the travel industry, in the blogging industry that listeners go follow?
Whoa.
Curveball.
Curveball, yeah. Let me think about this. I think there's a lot of bloggers out there, but I like to follow people who are doing it themselves, right? I've recently become friends with this girl called from Laura from Scale Your Travel Blog. And I like the fact that, she runs a travel blog and teaches it. I think it's very important to follow the people who are doing it, who haven't just
Mhm.
sold their blog and they're just teaching it, right?
Yeah.
I'd love all of you to follow me if you can. I'm pretty open. I always reply to my DMs. Aisha Preece, drop me an email. I think Ross is going to share two of my. I have six. I'll share two below in the show notes. Drop me a DM if you're kind of nervous and you're like, "Oh, I don't know where to begin." Drop me a DM. I always reply. But yeah, I would say sign up to a couple of newsletters and just look at what they talk about. Are they constantly like, are they giving value? I feel like before you buy anything from somebody, look at their free content. Like look at Ross's free content. This, you're listening to this, incredibly valuable. Listen to their free content, read their free content to help you make the decision whether to buy. And that's really what I would give advice for, really.
Yeah, I already signed up and I was reading some stuff earlier. It's great. And go check out her Pinterest too. Like I spent the weekend looking over that just to learn a little bit more. And I right off the bat, it was very organized, very easy to read. So yeah, no, I appreciate you coming on. This has been a great conversation, a lot of good laughs. And yeah, I think my to-do list is go to the Balkans and go get some meats from those
Oh
guys.
yeah, drop me a message if you want any advice. Happy to guide you. But thanks for, inviting me, and thanks everybody for taking the time to listen. We live in a busy world where everyone is distracted and time is so valuable. So thanks for taking the time to listen. I appreciate all of you.
Yeah, thanks so much. All right, have a good day, everyone. We'll talk next week.
Okay.